all things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss George Lucas versus Disney, round 6. Now, if you have been keeping up with my saga, then you are well aware that we have been discussing round 6. We have been
Now, if you have been
okay. We have been discussing round. We have been discussing the various.
You are well aware that
the various aspects and issues regarding let me fix this. I don't like that. Okay. Okay, here we go. Apologies, just wanted to fix up some things there real quick. And just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, yeah, we're good. All right. Apologies. So I just wanted to check back in. Okay, yeah. I just wanted to check back in with some updates, prepped for tonight, because tonight, we got episode 3. Um, I don't know how many people out there. Much love to everyone who just joined into the stream. Apologies for earlier. Had a little audio technical snafu, but I fixed it, so we're good to go. But right now, I just wanted to cover a recent article that was put out. And I just wanted to also cover a couple clips from Star Wars Theory and Star Wars Explained, just to give us a little bit of just two sides of an aspect, and to also just provide for us a level of clarity, because I don't know how many people out there are investing and watching the show or not. I will be doing a live stream, live viewing of the show. So if you want to join in on that, you're more than welcome to. But I just wanted to cover a lot of some of the controversies that are going on right now, and just provide a little bit of a well-balanced perspective. If you've listened to some of my other live streams regarding this topic, I've been trying to be pretty reasonable and just approaching this from just when we're watching this content, is it content that values us as viewers, as people who, love Star Wars, as people who love this content? And that's kind of what I've been approaching it as someone who loves Star Wars and grew up. I'm a prequel kid. That's been my jam. So I just kind of wanted to cover this article because, if many of you guys are aware, the media spin now is that the reason why the viewership has been so poor is because we're all racists, we're all bigots, and transphobes, we're sexist, all this stuff because the show is poor writing, it's very boring, it's very tacky, and it doesn't feel like Star Wars. Yeah, there's a little bit of decent chemistry between a couple characters here and there, and I would say that Soul, the actor from Squid Games, is probably the only person carrying this show with any weight of substance and charisma and acting abilities. But right now, they're, as always, attacking the fans, and attacking fans for having constructive criticism of the show. So I wanted to get into the article and then we'll jump into the clips. Alrighty. This article was written by Eric Kane, senior contributor, titled, and it was written June 6, 2024, titled The Critics Must Be Crazy. The Acolyte is just another mediocre Star Wars show. Okay. The critics must be crazy. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This time it's Star Wars The Acolyte that has aroused the profoundly odd sensibilities of the professional media class. That and the broken aggregation system that is Rotten Tomatoes. The latest show from the House of Mouse is fine at best, but you wouldn't know it in pursuing the internet. Behold, here we have an image, a screenshot from Rotten Tomatoes, showing that for the Acolyte, showing that the tomato meter is 93% certified fresh, while the audience score is at a 39%. I believe right now it may be close to 20%, but anyone out there, you're more than willing to check and confirm that for me in the chat. That's a wide divide. There are many reasons for it. We'll get there momentarily. First, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Seriously, it was a long time ago, 100 years before the rise of the Empire. The Acolyte takes place in the High Republic's final days, just before the long era of peace and prosperity came crashing down into turmoil and strife, at least partly thanks to the arrogance of the Jedi Order itself. Partly, too, thanks to a mysterious new villain who we can only hope turns out to be Darth Plagueis. Yeah, you're hoping for too much, man. You're hoping for clean water, and you're just gonna get shit stream. And this is one thing that I found really weird, and I was pointing out in my review of episode 1, 2, and 3, how it doesn't make sense that the Acolyte takes place 100 years before the rise of Empire, when issue, 17? Issue 17 or 20 of the Disney Star Wars main run addresses that the Sith and the Jedi have had a war that lasted for 300 years. So even in their own canon, they are contradicting themselves, which kind of tells you that they don't really care about their content. They don't really care about the world, their own world that they're trying to build and create. So, don't expect, any level of consistency in Disney Star Wars. It's a cool idea for a new Star Wars setting that before now we've only seen in games, comics, and books. We've been stuck in the Skywalker era for so long. Even a show like Andor, which has no Jedi and never mentions the Force or Luke Skywalker, still takes place within the years of the Imperial rise and fall. It's a breath of fresh air to see a Star Wars show actually branch out. Unfortunately, The Acolyte retains many of the franchise's worst habits and does next to nothing with the new setting that makes it actually feel new. Nor does it actually feel like Star Wars. These are my own words. This could be set 2 years before the prequel trilogy and nobody would be wiser. Damn. I wrote a review covering the first two episodes of the show before I'd watched the next two. You can read that here. I'll catch you up on the story without too many spoilers. I was tentatively optimistic after 2 episodes. I've become decidedly less so after 4. Quite frankly, even the final 4 episodes of the season turn out to be fantastic. The first 4 will hold it back for greatness. And how often does a series get that much better in its second half? Disney and the show's creators have billed the series as a darker delve into Star Wars. Critics have echoed this sentiment, calling it a show that makes bold choices. Inverse says that The Acolyte is a experimental, galvanizing, standalone story that establishes a new caliber of Star Wars TV can do. Galvanizing, new caliber. I don't know about any of y'all, but I smell shit in the air. Gosh, we must be watching different shows. I have to admit, I got to shout out to this writer. At least he's calling it out as it is, and this is on Forbes, so I can appreciate some level of honesty there. Elsewhere, we get such quotes as The Acolyte presents in its first few episodes a dashing adventure of mystery, action, impressive fight sequences, and a cat and mouse game that keeps you intrigued from one episode to the next. Showrunner Leslie Headland, best known as the co-creator of the Netflix series Russian Doll, breathes new life into the Star Wars universe with The Acolyte. Leslie Headland has created one of the best Star Wars series to date, making it a character-driven revenge story, one relying of copious action scenes, lightsaber battles, or legacy characters to drive the series. Yeah. It's smelling awfully funky when I read those quotes. Again, I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe reading these. One in which being a critic no longer requires you to be critical, but rather rewards you for simply liking the right things and disliking the wrong things. And he's completely right. And on top of that, on top of liking the right things and disliking the wrong things, many of these people get paid for liking the right things and disliking the wrong things. One of these quotes gushes over the impressive fight sequences, while another says it doesn't rely on copious action scenes. Bit of a contradiction there. But really, the number of reviews calling this some version of a compelling mystery or a riveting thriller or Star Wars has never done this before simply boggles the mind. None of this even remotely true. I say this as someone who has been mildly entertained by this series so far and will gladly watch the next 4 episodes. But really, you have to be realistic about these things. The only ground being broken here is in the cemetery where they bury of hopes and dreams. And from what the rumors say, episode 3 will definitely be that nail in the coffin. Nothing here beyond the error actually all that new, and very little about it or well written. It is, however, a very, very diverse, and I suspect that this focus on diversity derives a great deal of both the positive critical reception and the negative audience reviews. When you commit so utterly to making a social cause that the thing that defines your show, you effectively guarantee that it becomes just another shouting match in the never-ending culture wars. As I've noted elsewhere, there are better ways to approach this. And/or many positive critic reviews are less crazy. However, they're marked fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but they include phrases such as, The Acolyte doesn't really offer anything new to the universe in the way that Andor did, and ultimately feels a bit forced. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. This is not the worst we've seen from Star Wars TV, nor is it the best. There are tons of these, and because Rotten Tomatoes is binary, rotten or fresh, there's no middle ground upon which they can fall. Another juicy tomato. Many critics don't even pick whether their review should be regarded as fresh or rotten. They have that option, but Rotten Tomatoes can also just pick that for you instead. I discuss other issues with their review aggravator in a video below. The Acolyte is bombing with audiences. Audience scores reflect another extreme. At 39% as of this writing, the show is decidedly rotten. Is that an accurate representation of actual audience opinions? Are people just mad because the Acolyte is so diverse? The Star Wars Reddit doesn't seem too upset or thrilled. I get an overall sense of a meh. Maybe not 39%, but far, far from 93%. Whatever you might think of this front, most of the complaints I've seen so far don't focus on the diverse issues, but rather on the stittle dialogue, predictable plotting, and so forth. I want to repeat that. Most of the complaints I've seen so far don't focus on the diversity issue, but rather on the stilted dialogue, predictable plotting, and so forth. So, when you see all of those woke right pop culture commentator channels out there doing the whole race bait and saying this is all about race and da 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 this and da 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 that, most people aren't talking about the race. They're not talking about any of that stuff. They're not talking about the gayness in Star Wars and any of that nonsense. They're just talking about how this is not a good show. And if you've seen my review, if you watched it with me, you know it's a very boring show and that nothing happens. And I know he says Andor is a good show. I only got through, like 2.5 episodes, and I was just like, this is boring. And I stopped watching it. I didn't have any interest. So maybe it's good, but I really don't have any interest in watching it. But, this is one thing that's, an issue here is that people don't have an issue with the diversity in the show. And yes, you have Leslie Headland, you have Kathleen Kennedy, put a chick in it, make it gay and lame, and they've been promoting that and making this show, it's Star Wars is gay, it's all about diversity, all this, bullshit. But people aren't complaining about that. They're just complaining about how bad this show is. But you do have the woke right making a big deal about the diversity and making a big deal about the whole concept of the force is female, which is nothing new. I mean, if you are into mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, any of these types of mythologies, you'll know that the whole idea of life and duality, there was a woman, Gaia, if you want to look at it from Greek. That is actually the Titans, Isis, which is in Egyptian mythology, who Mother Mary is based off of. But I digress. I'm not here to try to get all over off the reins. But when they try to make it complain about certain ideas in Star Wars, if you go and you look at ancient mythology and ancient religions, they're deriving from some of these ancient ideas. The problem is they're just executed so poorly and in such a disrespectful manner, not only to the lore of the universe, but also the mythology it's inspired by. That's where I have issues, personally. But let's continue. Whatever you might think on this front, most of the complaints I've seen so far don't focus on the diversity issue, but rather on the stidled dialogue, predictable plotting, and so forth. Mostly, longtime Star Wars fans just continue to feel generally deflated by the overall mediocrity and lack of ambition that Disney is bringing to the table. A sampling. Quote, the show is watchable, which was an improvement over Obi-Wan and the litless Ahsoka, but there is no sign of genuine creative ambition in this show, and it suffers from the same sense of weightlessness and lack of dramatic sense as Ahsoka. The characters don't grab my interest, and I haven't spent 2 seconds thinking about the plot during or after watching. Ugh. This is as bad as you've heard. Visually, it looks okay, I guess. The fights are fine, but being massively overrated by Disney friendly media. The rest is garbage fire. Terrible acting, weird pacing, bargain basement writing, and a pointless changes to Star Wars mythology. It just feels wrong throughout, even compared to other Disney Star Wars. Having thus far watched the first 2 episodes of the show, it is just very eh. Like a lot of folks are saying, the score is fantastic and is probably the highlight, but good sound can't carry a show. Thus far, the characters are all a bit bland. I'm hopeful of further character development in the next episode. You can keep on praying, my brother. I'll have more to say about the core fundamental problems with the Acolyte in a separate post, now that I've watched the first 4 episodes. But I have to largely agree with these commentators. It's just incredibly underwhelming. The critics gushing praise for this series sound out of touch with Star Wars and its fandom and what makes it tick, and really out of touch with good writing in general. The Acolyte is just okay. It might get better, it might get worse. Maybe the back half of the season will blow our minds, but right now, it's just a deeply bland Star Wars series with some cool fight scenes and a handful of cool characters I'm afraid will ultimately be wasted, just like the cast of the sequel trilogy. I've written about this before and I'll say it again. Relentless mediocrity is what's killing Star Wars, and Marvel, and DC, and so much of pop culture. The majority of Disney Star Wars shows and movies have been watered down and disappointing affairs that seem to want to capitalize on the property without bothering to understand what makes us love it to begin with. They have just enough redeeming qualities to prevent them from being truly terrible. I don't know about that. Mostly, they're just bland and forgettable and lacking the great charm and heroics that made the original trilogy such an iconic entry in the history of cinema. I think this article does a very good job of explaining a lot of what I have been trying to stress and articulate. And what I think a lot of, you know, normal Star Wars fans and hardcore Star Wars fans have been saying. And, let's be real. Star Wars is a boy brand. Yes, George Lucas made this for everyone. We know that. But this really was made and catered to boys, which is nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of girls that love Star Wars, even when it first came out. But this really was a boy brand. And young men and older men who really enjoyed Star Wars are what carried it. Those younger men who maybe inspired their girlfriends or friends, girls that are friends, fathers who inspired their daughters to get into Star Wars, and so on and so forth. So we have to remember when they try to say that Star Wars isn't for women, it's always been for women, but it was designed for men because this is a boy brand. The toys, the action figures, compared to Barbie, there's a reason why Barbie did so well in terms of a doll and in terms of a film. It was a film that was catered to women. Women love Barbie. There are plenty of women out there, black, white, Latino, Asian, you name it, that have had some form of a Barbie doll in their life. Maybe not for a long time, maybe briefly, but they did. And they enjoyed Barbie. It's no different than with Star Wars. So, he's saying things that are not, out of the realm of, craziness or wildness. they're actually quite reasonable and understanding. But because Lucasfilm and Disney is now being run by ideologues who don't like Star Wars, they don't like Marvel, they don't like DC, they don't like any of these. They've made it very clear. And so this is what I've been saying for a while now, is that you have people in charge of these beloved IPs who are creating content for an imaginary audience that they themselves have created. And so when nobody watches it, when everybody criticizes it, they blame everybody for not liking it, for not watching it, for not supporting it. When you yourselves told us that you're not making it for us, you don't want us to watch it, we're all racist, we're all these phobias, and that you're making it for your imaginary audience. Okay. Don't get mad at us. Don't blame us for your failures. So, this is what I've been saying a lot. Let them do what they want to do. Because in the end, they have no one else to blame. Everyone has wised up to it. Even now, you have mainstream articles, mainstream magazine outlets and newspaper outlets admitting and calling out Disney now and Lucasfilm. For so long, though, they were sucking off that taint. But now they got a taste of that shit, and they're like, I'm good. I'm good. And the money's drying up. That shill money is drying up. How long can the shills keep on, loving this stuff? How long? When the mainstream media is already beginning to turn. And so, this is where I want to segment to some of the clips and just address, some of these things. And I think it's important that we start with some of the Star Wars theory clips, and a clip that I wanted to play the other day, but I had caveman brain and I didn't know how to work my system. So I wanted to cover this real quick. Okay. Now, this is an interview with Leslie Headland, the writer, showrunner, and Amanda Steinfeld. So I wanted to. This is an interview with Leslie Headland, and I wanted to look at this.
I want to ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you
Not the
bracing
gayest
yourself?
Star Wars. Not the.
It's pretty gay. Let's be honest. Leslie, how do you feel?
Am I gay? Yes.
Well, no, I know
Yeah.
you are gay, but I'm asking, are you excited about putting this, this is going to be a talking point.
Is it going to be a talking point?
I'm sure so.
Because nerds are gay.
Well,
Yeah.
some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true. But
Yeah.
in my world, nerds are gay.
Okay. Was this the fun element of it?
No, I don't think so. And yet people have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly
You're offended?
into it. No.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen
It's
the
true.
fits? We'd be like, look how gay this is, and then send each other a reference photo.
And are you
from-
telling me with a straight face that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Oh,
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Ask Filoni. Okay.
Ask for
Can you
one.
imagine?
Yeah, talk to Filoni.
And so, let me see this one. No. Yeah, okay, here. So we just saw that. Now, I want, I want you guys to kind of think about that clip there. And, essentially how, they're saying, Star Wars is gay, it's always been gay. And Leslie Haddon is happy that people are calling it the gayest Star Wars. And we're well aware that, Star Wars was made for kids. It's always been for kids. And so when you have, you know, Leslie Headland and them making comments like that and then saying that, nerds don't like it because Star Wars is gay, it starts getting really weird. And so here is Star Wars theory. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with Star Wars theory, but he is, like you could say one of the golden boys of the Star Wars community. He has over several million subscribers. His whole channel is on Star Wars. And he made his own Star Wars film that was a little controversial and there were some issues with it with Disney and what have you. But he's been trying to be reasonable with Disney Star Wars and their approach to fans as well as their approach to the content. So, in that video you just heard where we heard Leslie Headland and Amanda Seinfeld saying that Star Wars is gay and it's, all about gayness and nerds who don't like that Star Wars is gay. So I wanted to play Star Wars Theory's reaction to this because it's important to get everyone's perspective on this and to be open-minded. So I just want everyone to just take a listen to this. Oh, shit, hold on. Oops, sorry. I just realized I muted the audio. So let's go back. Here we go. Apologies. Okay.
Because nerds are gay.
Well, some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true. But in my world, nerds are gay.
I don't think nerds are threatened about gay stuff. I mean, those are just homophobes. I don't know why he's creating enemies and saying bullshit. Nerds don't care if someone is gay. Nerds don't care who you love. Nerds just want cool nerd shit, like a well-written story. That's all we care about. I don't care who you love. You're a human at the end of the day, and so am I, and that's all that fucking matters. God. People who don't like gay people are homophobes. Those are assholes. Nerds just want cool shit. We just want cool stories. We also don't need your sexual preference shoved in our face nonstop. I don't need to know you're straight. I don't care. I don't need to know you're gay. I don't care. Just tell me a good story. The rest is irrelevant.
And are you telling me, with a straight face, that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Oh,
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah.
I thought R2 was a guy. There goes all my canon knowledge. God, when did they drop this nugget of info?
I want to play that again because I messed up earlier. But I want to play that again for you guys because you really need to hear that.
Because nerds are gay.
Well, some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true. But
Yeah.
in my world, nerds are gay.
I don't think nerds are threatened about gay stuff. I mean, those are just homophobes. I don't know why he's creating enemies and saying bullshit. Nerds don't care if someone is gay. Nerds don't care who you love. Nerds just want cool nerd shit, like a well-written story. That's all we care about. I don't care who you love. You're a human at the end of the day, and so am I, and that's all that fucking matters. God. People who don't like gay people are homophobes. Those are assholes. Nerds just want cool shit. We just want cool stories. We also don't need your sexual preference shoved in our face nonstop. I don't need to know you're straight. I don't care. I don't need to know you're gay. I don't care. Just tell me a good story. The rest is irrelevant.
And are you telling me with a straight face that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Oh,
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah.
I thought R2 was a guy. There goes all my canon knowledge. God, when did they drop this nugget of info?
So, there you have it. Like, and this is what I was talking about. Star Wars Theory, he's a reasonable guy. He was attacked actually by Star Wars. He was attacked by Pablo Hidalgo. All right, Star Wars Theory here, reasonable guy, was attacked by Pablo Hidalgo, one of the guys on the Lucasfilm story group, because there was a video of him crying when Luke returned in The Mandalorian season 2, and he was crying about it because it was beautiful. Listen, man, when that scene happened, I was literally on my knees in front of my TV, like freaking out. I was so excited to see Luke in action. That's literally all we wanted. And Pablo Hidalgo, who's head of the Lucasfilm story group, was actually mocking him and attacking him for crying and enjoying that scene and enjoying to see Luke in his totality, who he's always been, who we grew up with. Even if you played Jedi Outcast and Jedi Knight, Luke in those games was a total badass. He was so cool. So, I really wanted to kind of stress that and show that a little bit here. And I want to continue. So I have another clip I want to share with you guys.
I don't know how much abuse Star Wars fans get. Like, we just want good stories, man. You got Kathleen Kennedy saying that we hate women. You got Leslie Headland or whatever that interviewer saying nerds hate gay people, threatened by them. And then now the show is meant to shit on white people. I mean, I don't. What the fuck else do you want?
Well,
Like, we just want good stories, man. Like, leave us alone. Nerds were literally the outcasts. Yeah. We accepted everybody. We don't care if you're gay, straight. We don't care if you're a man or woman. A girl who's a nerd, a girl who's into Star Wars. Are you kidding me? Please. That was the kind of our way of thinking, is that we would accept everybody because we were outcasts. No one liked nerds back in the day. Now it's like completely shifted, where being a nerd is cool and trendy and you can make money from it and you can join the clique. It's bullshit, and it's become this like weird political version of what it once was.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, well, the best way I could liken this is like, say you just got a group of friends who gather together to play Dungeons and Dragons, a shared hobby you all like, Das Kapital, and I want you guys to all talk about why communism is the way forward for all of us. And then the rest of them are like, I'm not really sure about that, I just want to play Dungeons and Dragons and just have an adventure. Why are you such a bigot? Why do you hate change? Why can't you accept people for who they are? That's the same analogy that we've got here. You're trying to bring all of your political baggage into just a nerddom. That's all they cared about. And when people pushed back against you, you've just hit them with every slur under the book. That's
like
what
when
every fan base has become now.
I want to play that one more time for you guys.
I don't know how much abuse Star Wars fans get. Like, we just want good stories, man. You got Kathleen Kennedy saying that we hate women. You got Leslie Headland or whatever that interviewer saying nerds hate gay people, threatened by them. And then now the show is meant to shit on white people. I mean, I don't. What the fuck else do you want?
Well,
Like, we just want good stories, man. Like, leave us alone. Nerds were literally the outcasts.
Yeah.
We accepted everybody. We don't care if you're gay, straight. We don't care if you're a man or woman. A girl who's a nerd, a girl who's into Star Wars. Are you kidding me? Please. That was the kind of our way of thinking, is that we would accept everybody because we were outcasts. No one liked nerds back in the day. Now it's like completely shifted, where being a nerd is cool and trendy and you can make money from it and you can join the clique. It's bullshit. And it's become this like weird political version of what it once was.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, well, the best way I could liken this is like, say you just got a group of friends who gather together to play Dungeons and Dragons, a shared hobby you all like, Das Kapital. And I want you guys to all talk about why communism is the way forward for all of us. And then the rest of them are like, I'm not really sure about that. I just want to play Dungeons and Dragons and just have an adventure. Why are you such a bigot? Why do you hate change? Why can't you accept people for who they are? That's the same analogy that we've got here. You're trying to bring all of your political baggage into just a nerddom. That's all they cared about. And when people pushed back against you, you've just hit them with every slur under the book. That's
like
what
when
every fan base has become now.
I wanted just to play that again for you guys, just in case you didn't hear it. But say what you want about the critical drinker. I know people have their gripes with him. Same with Mahler. But I would say that he's making some reasonable points there. This attack that we're experiencing right now in these various fan bases is just part of a larger symptom of an issue that we have, where many of our favorite IPs and stories and worlds have been corporatized. And I've been saying this in the gaming community. Like, you have people, making racist complaints about the new Assassin's Creed game because you're playing as a black samurai. And the woke right was freaking out about that. Now they're crying and complaining because there's hip hop music in the new Assassin's Creed game, and they're calling that racist because there's hip hop in it when you're playing as a samurai, as a black samurai. And I'm thinking to myself, like, have you guys ever seen Afro Samurai, Samurai Champloo? Like, anyways, I'm getting off topic, but the point that I'm trying to make is, like, you have these two sides of this reactionary fan base. You have the woke right side and you have the woke left side, and they're constantly trying to trigger each other and inflame each other, and they keep on furthering the divide. And then you have people out there like Star Wars Theory, who's not part of any of that type of grifting and grandstanding. He's out here, he just wants good stories. All of us, a majority of us who aren't part of the whole grifting and monetizing and exploiting that kind of narrative, those people, the rest of us, we just want good stories. We want quality stories. We want Star Wars to challenge our beliefs in Star Wars. We want it to challenge the technological capabilities, the story writing, the world building. That's all we've ever wanted. But like I've said, they have made Star Wars corporate. And it's corporatized within Marxist ideologies. You can attack me for it, you can criticize me for it. That's just the reality of it is. When you look into Leslie Headland, the fact that she was the personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein, say that, take that information as you will. You look into the way she talks, the things she talks about, she has a lot of Marxist ideologies. If you listen to any of these Hollywood actors that are involved in Star Wars or even in Marvel, they have a lot of Marxist ideologies. And so you then start having to kind of ask yourself, why am I hearing a lot of Marxist ideology being spoken about in a galaxy far, far away? And it contradicts the world that's established. These are things you have to take into consideration and ask yourself as a fan, does this fit? And so far, the world that they have created, this Disney Star Wars, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. It doesn't look like Star Wars, doesn't write like Star Wars, doesn't perform like Star Wars. You can say that about Rings of Power. You can say that about Star Trek. You can say that about some of the gaming industry. But at the exact same time, like I've always said, in the end, let them do this. They have no one else to blame. They've already blamed the races. They've already blamed the nerds. They've already blamed the men. They've already blamed the white men. They've already blamed everybody. Just let them do what they want to do. Because it doesn't matter now. People have moved on. There are newer things out there. There are more important things out there to look at. There are newer things to invest in. So let them do their things and just go along for the ride at this point and criticize it. Yeah, sure, go ahead. But, don't. My whole thing is if you're going to criticize these things, criticize it within reason, but don't start trying to turn it into a race and this white guilt and all this other kind of bullshit that they're trying to spin it into just to make a quick buck and to divide the fan base. We need to actually kind of unite within a constructive criticism of what they're doing to our shows, but they're not allowing us to do that because you have people out there that are inflaming certain narratives to monetize off of it. And I don't agree with that. I don't like that. And I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. But when it comes to the way Disney and Lucasfilm has regarded us as fans and as consumers, let them say what they want. They're going to attack us. They're going to continue to attack us because I said they have created this content for an imaginary fan base. They've told everyone else, don't watch it, don't participate, don't get involved. But this is one aspect I want to show you in terms of what happens when you have people who are grifting off of the monetization to criticize Star Wars. So I want to play this video. It's from Star Wars Explained. And some people might call him a shill. I'm not here to say anything like that. I don't know if he's a shill. I've stopped watching his content for years, but this video clip came out of his, and I thought it really points a good picture of why we have to be mindful of the critics that we listen to when it comes to to pop culture, because sometimes they're just talking out their ass and they don't really even know the IP or the lore or the foundations of the world that they so knowingly claim to love and are the purveyors of justice and truth and keeping it, authentic. So I just want to play this video for you guys so, we also get another idea of the way these people behave. So where is it? Okay, here we go.
The Acolyte showed fire in space. How can this be? There's no oxygen for it to burn. Look, I agree with you. The fire jumped out at me too as being a little odd. Some other way to hint at OSHA's trauma. But to act like this is some absurd thing that Star Wars would never ever do if George Lucas were around is a stretch. I've brought up this quote time and time again, but in the Star Wars Archives book, George said, "In my world, there is air in outer space, when I want it. If he felt something that bent the laws of nature would help him tell a better story, he would do it, like the Bridge of the Executor in Return of the Jedi, or the burning shrapnel that can be seen flying around in Revenge of the Sith during the Battle of Coruscant. It's still sustained fire burning in the vacuum of space. Also, I'm not an engineer, but it might be feasible that whatever gas was leaking out of the pressure valve could have been oxygen to help keep the fire going." The Acolyte showed fire in space. How can this be? There's no oxygen for it to burn. Look, I agree with you. The fire jumped out at me too as being a little odd. I think there could have been a fire inside the ship or some other way to hint at OSHA's trauma. But to act like this is some absurd thing that Star Wars would never ever do if George Lucas were around is a stretch. I've brought up this quote time and time again, but in the Star Wars Archives book, George said, "In my world, there is air in outer space, when I want it. If he felt something that bent the laws of nature would help him tell a better story, he would do it, like the Bridge of the Executor in Return of the Jedi, or the burning shrapnel that can be seen flying around in Revenge of the Sith during the Battle of Coruscant. It's still sustained fire burning in the vacuum of space. Also, I'm not an engineer, but it might be feasible that whatever gas was leaking out of the pressure valve could have been oxygen to help keep the fire going."
And so, I wanted to play that clip from Star Wars Explained because it just provides a level of balance when we come to criticizing Star Wars, because how often are people kind of forgetting about the intro in Revenge of the Sith, or as he put it, the Superstar Destroyer, the Executor in Return of the Jedi. And so you know, if you've seen the opening scene of Revenge of the Sith, it's a fantastic space battle. It's incredible, explosions, you name it. It's awesome. And so here we have a quote from Lucasfilm, George Lucas himself, pretty much explaining, listen, if I want fire and space, I'm going to have it. If it's going to help me tell a better story, if it's going to help me improve on the world that I'm building. And so when people were criticizing fire in space in Star Wars, I had to kind of roll my eyes a bit, because I'm like, come on, guys. Like, we've seen fire in Star Wars before. The problem here is that the way that they tried to use it to invoke a form of PTSD in OSHA, it doesn't work. It doesn't captivate you, and it felt very out of place. So I think those are the issues that people have, because there are better ways of explaining and triggering her trauma of her past that make for better storytelling, and this moment wasn't it. We have space whales in Star Wars, and people were mocking the concept of space whales in Star Wars, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, so it's stupid to have space whales, but it's not stupid to have giant space worms that live in asteroids? So, you know, this is what I mean by when it comes to these various, you know, pop culture commentators out there. Like, sometimes their criticisms are inauthentic and not genuine, and they're just doing it to manipulate your thought process, and, you know, and sometimes also to get a super chat and to get money out of you, and to trigger you, inflame you. And so this is why I wanted to kind of point this out, is that when some of the criticisms that are being levied at Disney Star Wars, we have to approach it from a more, you know, realistic standpoint and kind of pump the brakes, because we just don't like what they're producing, which you have every right to, but don't try to manipulate it. There's always been explosions in Star Wars. It's been fine. People had no problem with it in A New Hope when the Death Star exploded. No one had any problems with it. No one had any problems with it in Empire Strikes Back. No one had any problems with it in Return of the Jedi when the Death Star exploded again. No one had any problems with it in A Phantom Menace. Okay, so I'm just saying for everyone out there, like, we have to be a little realistic with our critiques. We gotta, you know, we have to criticize Star Wars for the way the creators and Lucasfilm is treating the fans and treating the mythology. That's what we have to be critical about. And it has to be critical in a manner that respects us as fans, okay? That's one part that we have to keep in mind. We have to have some level of self-respect. And I think that's something that's a little bit lacking nowadays, especially in the pop culture commentators, whether it's for video games or for film and television. So just in closing, I just want people out there, listen, you have every right to hate watch things. Plenty of people do that. You have every right to not watch it, to not support it. And that's fine. And you have every right to support whoever you want to support that is critical of the things that you love and don't love. But just also, you know, be mindful that sometimes they're going to manipulate you into a certain train of thought and feeling towards particular content, IPs, films, people, history, you name it. So, you know, I think we should all have a little bit of individuality when we are listening to our favorite podcasters and commentators and what have you. Just maintain that individuality in there a little bit so that you don't become, you know, inducted into the hive mind mentality. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.